Hey guys, welcome back. Thank you for tuning in again today for episode 2. If you missed the very first episode of Makeup with Friends, be sure to go watch that one. We went over the pilot episode, of course, and went over some fun facts and trivia behind the scenes, behind the show. So definitely be sure to go watch that one. I will link it in the description box for you. If this is your first time here, be sure you hit that subscribe button so you can come back for all of the future episodes within this series. I will be talking about an episode of Friends, some fun facts, some trivia, some behind the scenes details while doing my makeup. However, it will have absolutely nothing to do with makeup. So even if you don't give a crap about makeup, I think you will still enjoy, and I hope that you continue watching. Before we get started, I want to point out that in every single episode of this series, I am going to be including a Friends trivia question in the comments below. I would love for you to go leave your answer, and the answer to the trivia question will always be in the next episode's description box. So the answer to episode 1's trivia question will be in this video's description box. I hope that isn't too confusing. I personally feel like I am queen of Friends trivia, and I'm sure all of you Friends obsessed watchers out there feel the same. So I wanted a way to be able to share some trivia with you guys and to add to our overall sense of community together. So I would love for you to go leave your answers down below. No cheating though. So without further ado, let's get into episode 2. I'm excited for this episode because we are going to be meeting a lot of important characters for the very first time. The very first one being Anita Barone, who is going to play Ross's ex-wife, Carol. However, Anita will only appear as Carol in this one episode. She will be replaced by Jane Sibbett, who I will talk about in just a moment. From what I gathered from my research, Anita had originally auditioned for one of the 3 main female roles, either Monica, Phoebe, or Rachel, but was offered the recurrent role of Carol instead, and she took it, but then later decided that she wanted to pursue a more full-time role. Jane Sibbett was offered the role as Carol, and we'll meet her in future episodes, so we won't talk too much about her as an actress right now, but I do want to mention the main role that stands out for me is the stepmom, or soon-to-be stepmom, in It Takes Two, starring Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. Jane played the role of Clarice Kensington.
Who is she?
She's gonna be your new mother.
That movie also brings me some serious nostalgia, just one of my all-time favorites. Anyway, me personally, I am very happy that they replaced Anita with Jane, in my opinion, and no offense to the actress, no offense whatsoever. Anita was just very regular. She was very sweet, very nice. I mean, she played the role well, but she didn't stand out to me the way that Jane does as Carol. Jane just brings a certain different attitude, like a certain quirkiness to the role that really stands out and really just makes me love her character so much more. Especially with who we'll talk about in just a moment, Susan's character, who Susan is her own type of personality. Anyway, so I really like Jane better as Carol. You'll have to let me know down below what you think. Speaking of Susan, we will be meeting her for the first time this episode. As we mentioned in episode 1, Susan is Carol's girlfriend. So Susan is played by Jessica Hett. I think she is a beautiful actress. I didn't really see that she took part in any major movies. She appeared in a lot of different TV shows. Some of them really surprised me, one of them being Limitless and Breaking Bad, The Affair. And as of most recently, it looked like the TV show The Sinner, starring Jessica Biel and then later directed by Jessica Biel. Oh, such a good TV show if you like mystery, intrigue. Awesome TV show. We will be meeting Barry for the very first time. He was mentioned in episode 1. Barry is played by Mitchell Whitfield, who, upon looking into his career, I didn't see any major roles. He did play in the movie My Cousin Vinny, and then it looked like he played a lot of voices in a lot of different cartoons, TV shows, one of them being The Angry Beavers. And another one that was really interesting to me, he played Mr. Blaine in The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, starring Dylan and Cole Sprouse, who, if you are a Friends fan, you know the two of them played the character of Ben, Ross's soon-to-be son. We will be meeting Ross and Monica's mom and dad for the very first time, Jack and Judy. Jack is played by Elliot Gould, and Judy is played by Christina Pickles. So, episode 2, the one with the sonogram at the end, first aired on September 29th, 1994. This is the first episode where clips from the actual show are put into the opening scene, the opening credits. If you remember from episode 1, the opening scene is the only time where you'll see the full-length fountain scene. According to my research, they decided to do this because they felt that having just the fountain scene made the cast, the characters seem too cool, and instead decided to include clips from the show within the opening credits because it made the cast, the characters seem more relatable to the audience. So we are going to jump ahead to the second scene. We are outside of the museum where Ross works as a paleontologist, which, if you notice, the sign outside says the Museum of Prehistoric History. However, we will later learn, and I believe Ross says this himself, that he works at the Museum of Natural History. Just a minor goof within the show. So we are in the museum in one of the exhibits. Ross is having a conversation with one of his coworkers, kind of bantering about the setup of the exhibit.
Doesn't she seem a little angry?
Well, she has issues.
Does she?
He's out banging other women over the head with a club while she sits at home trying to get the mastodon smell out of the carpet.
And then the coworker says to Ross,
Is that your ex-wife outside?
and the camera backs up a bit and we see Carol standing there outside the glass pane. The coworker leaves, Ross invites Carol in, and Carol, again played by Anita, she's very pretty. She's wearing a pretty sundress. Her hair is curly. She looks very cute, very beautiful. Like I said, very girl next door. And Ross, upon seeing her, is very flustered.
Hi.
He obviously still has feelings for her, which, you can't blame him. I mean, the relationship didn't necessarily end badly because they disliked each other. So they're talking, trying to make some small talk, and Ross finally breaks down and says, Carol, why are you here?
Oh, and
Carol, why are you here, Carol?
And she turns around and announces to him that she is pregnant.
I'm pregnant.
Pregnant.
In the next scene, we are at Monica's apartment with Chandler, Joey, Phoebe, and Monica. Rachel's there too, but she's in her bedroom. Monica is frantically cleaning the apartment, fluffing pillows, refluffing pillows.
She already fluffed that pillow. Monica, you already fluffed, but it's fine.
She snags a cup from Joey mid-sip.
Are you through with that?
Yeah, sorry, the swallowing slowed me down.
She's all over the place, and if you are a Friends watcher, you know Monica's obsessive compulsiveness when it comes to cleanliness, and this is the first time that we are getting a glimpse at that.
Whose little ball of paper is this?
Oh, that would be mine. See, I wrote a note to myself, and then I realized I didn't need the note, so I balled it up, and now I wish I was dead.
We learn that she is obsessively cleaning because her parents, Jack and Judy, are going to be coming over. Joey tries to comfort Monica.
Yeah, calm down. You don't see Ross getting all chaotic and twirly every time they come?
In which Monica admits that she feels that to them, Ross can do no wrong.
That's because as far as my parents are concerned, Ross can do no wrong. You see, he's the prince. Apparently they had some big ceremony before I was born.
Giving us the impression that maybe Ross is the favorite child and she just wants to have her house, her place looking as clean, and she wants to present herself in the best light so that they don't pick on her.
Look, I'm sorry guys, I just don't want to give them any more ammunition than they already have.
Yes, and we all know how cruel a parent can be about the flatness of a child's pillow.
This is also the first scene in the show where we are introduced to Ugly Naked Guy.
Ew, 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 ew.
What?
Ugly naked guy got a thigh master.
Rachel then emerges from her room. She is holding her hands, kind of rubbing her fingers. She looks nervous, kind of looking around, and she asks everyone if they have seen her engagement ring.
Has anybody seen my engagement engagement ring?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And then she admits that she has lost her ring and begins rummaging through Monica's freshly fluffed pillows.
Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. No, don't touch that.
Rachel's really stressed out and frantic because she's meeting Barry tomorrow to give him back his engagement ring.
Oh God, and now I'm gonna have to return the ring without the ring, which makes it so much harder.
Rachel walks over to the kitchen to the counter where Monica has a fresh made lasagna sitting there, which is going to be what's served to her, Ross, and her parents. And Rachel looks at the lasagna and says,
Oh, don't be mad.
You didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I gave you one job. Oh, but look how straight those noodles are.
Rachel's devastated. Monica is truly devastated. The guys rush over and say,
Now, Monica, you know that's not how you look for an engagement ring in lasagna.
so she sadly places the lasagna on the table and they dig in. Next, we hear a knock at the door. Monica goes over and opens it, and Ross is there.
Hi.
He tells everyone that Carol had stopped by and told him that she is pregnant.
Carol's pregnant.
Oh, I found it.
In which everyone is just as surprised as Ross is. Well, probably not just as surprised, but they made him with the same level of shock. He then shares more of the conversation that took place between him and Carol, tells them that Carol and Susan are okay with the pregnancy and are okay with him, Ross, being as involved with the baby as he wants, whether he wants nothing to do with it or he wants to be involved as the baby's father.
Carol says she and Susan want me to be involved, but if I'm not comfortable with it, I don't have to be involved.
I mean, presumably, the biggest part of your job is done.
Ross has a seat on Monica's couch. Monica comes and sits next to him, and they're all consoling Ross while he is having this realization, another major life change. He just went through something huge in the last episode of divorcing his wife because she realized she was a lesbian, and now he's realizing that he's going to be a father. His entire world is turning upside down yet again. Ross tells them that Carol's having her first sonogram tomorrow and he's invited to go along. And while Ross is confiding in his friends, we hear some clanking in the background and the camera zooms out and we see Joey having a seat at the kitchen table, mowing down some lasagna.
Well, this is still ruined, right?
Classic Joey. The next scene, we are still in Monica's apartment. However, it is now Monica, Ross, and their parents, Jack and Judy. They are sitting in Monica's living room area. They are eating what appears to be appetizers. And we already see Monica's mom, Judy, starting in on Monica. She takes a bite of whatever this appetizer is and says,
What's that curry taste?
and Monica says,
Curry.
You get the impression that Ross knows how Monica feels. You can see Ross as this whole interaction between the four of them takes place. He is trying to talk Monica up. He makes a comment about how he really likes the appetizers.
I think they're great. I really do.
You remember the Ludwins. The big one had a thing for you, didn't she?
They all had a thing for him.
You know, just trying all that he can to keep good attention on Monica. Judy is telling Monica that a friend of theirs is going to school for something within culinary and is going to be calling Monica because Judy gave them the impression that Monica has a restaurant. And Monica corrects her and says,
No, Mom, I don't have a restaurant. I work in a restaurant.
and Judy says,
Well, they don't have to know that.
confirming the idea that Jack and Judy don't see Monica as highly as they do Ross. So much so that they are leading their friends on to believe that she is higher up in her career than she actually is. We don't see it so much in this episode, but as the show goes on and Jack and Judy make more appearances, it's interesting to me to see the dynamics between Jack and Judy because to me, they seem very much like opposites. Like Judy is always dressed to the nines. She's got fancy jewelry. Her hair is always done up and she seems so very proper. Like she very much seems to favor fancy things and aesthetics. He's all about status. Whereas Jack, to me, he definitely seems to be more like the dad that you would find out on the fishing boat Saturday, Sunday morning. in jeans and a corduroy button-up. You know, he just is so much more laid back. It's just very interesting to me that the characters that they play and the personalities that they portray and just how different they seem to be to each other. Anyway, you can tell Monica's already getting very flustered and dinner hasn't even been served yet. Monica asks Ross to come help her in the kitchen to help with the spaghetti.
Oh, we're having spaghetti. That's easy.
Ross goes over to Monica in the kitchen and Monica basically begs him to tell their parents about Carol being pregnant.
Because I think it might take some of the heat off me.
I think deep down, Monica hopes that Ross will be seen a little bit,
Just a tiny little bit.
less than the golden child they presume him to be. We then cut to dinner. We are still in Monica's apartment. Monica, Ross, Judy, and Jack are sitting at Monica's kitchen table eating spaghetti, and Ross has not yet told them the news about Carol being pregnant, and Jack and Judy are going
On and on and on.
really hammering in on Monica. Not like intentionally, but everything that they say comes off as like an attack. They are at first talking about Rachel and her wedding, how much they spent for the wedding, and then Judy makes a comment
Well, at least you had the chance to leave a man at the altar.
in which Monica says,
What's that supposed to mean?
Nothing. It's an expression.
Jack interjects and makes a comment about how Monica's always been independent and she's been fine.
Even when you were a kid and you were chubby and you had no friends, you were just fine.
Side note, this is the first time that we're learning that Monica struggled with her weight growing up, which will play a bigger role as the show goes on. Dinner goes on and Jack and Judy continue to unintentionally diss Monica about her life decisions, you know, her lack of having a boyfriend and her career, all while praising Ross in his career as a paleontologist and
Yada, yada, yada.
And I read about these women trying to have it all, and I thank God our little harmonica doesn't seem to have that problem.
they really drag it on to the point where Monica is just sitting there beside herself. Like, she looks just exhausted from taking all the heat the entire dinner. Poor Monica. She finally reaches her breaking point. She turns to Ross and very bluntly, loudly asks,
So, Ross, what's going on with you? Any stories? No news? No little anecdotes to share with the folks?
Okay.
Ross finally takes a hint, stands up, and begins telling his parents what happened between him and Carol.
Carol's a lesbian. She's living with a woman named Susan. She's pregnant with my child. And she and Susan are going to raise the baby.
And then Jack and Judy look at each other, and then Judy turns to Monica and says,
And you knew about this?
confirming that really, truly, Ross can do no wrong. Poor Monica. Poor harmonica. The next scene, we are in the coffee shop with all 6 friends. Monica is laying on the orange sofa. She looks just beaten. She just looks beside herself. Monica makes a comment that if she could change who her parents were, she would want Ross's parents, which again, it's just so sad. How awful to always feel that you are competing with your sibling. Anyway, Ross says he has to go to the bathroom. He gets up, kisses Monica on the head. You know, it's not that he's like all smug about it. He and Monica are very close. They have a close relationship, and I think he feels for her. But also, I think a little part of him truly does like being the golden child. Phoebe then speaks up and says that it's even worse when you're twins, which is the first time that we learn that Phoebe has a sibling, a twin sister.
Oh, yeah. We don't speak. She's like this high-powered, driven career type.
What does she do?
She's a waitress.
As we learned at the end of episode 1, Rachel is a waitress now at the coffee shop, and she is working. It is end of shift, time for closing, and so she asked her friends to head out so that she can close up and be done for the day. Phoebe, Monica, Chandler, Joey get up and leave the coffee shop, turning out the lights on the way out. And then Ross emerges from the bathroom, walks out into an empty, dark Central Park.
How long was I in there?
Rachel says she's just closing up. Ross, being the nice guy that he is, then asks Rachel if she needs any help cleaning up, and she says,
Oh, yeah, sure.
and then passes him the broom and then takes a seat on the couch.
Oh, you need any help?
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Probably my favorite part, my favorite scene of the entire second episode. So then Ross begins sweeping and he asks Rachel if she's nervous about meeting Barry tomorrow. She admits that she is, asks Ross if he has any advice for her. And Ross, again, being the nice guy that he is, gives actually really good advice.
Chances are he's going to be this broken shell of a man, you know, so you should try not to look too terrific. I know it'll be hard.
Because Ross thinks that she is beautiful. And then in the next breath, he offers to go bring the ring back to Barry, and Rachel go to the sonogram with Susan and Carol, which then reminds Rachel of Ross's current situation and stress that he's going through.
You've got Carol tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, when did it get so complicated?
Got me.
And then she goes on to reminisce about high school, saying, didn't you just think when you were in high school that things would be easy, that you would just meet someone and you'd be happy and that would be it? At this point, Rachel is still seated on the couch. Ross has put down the broom. He's standing behind the couch, so Rachel can't see his facial expression, but he's lovingly staring at Rachel, of course, because he had a thing for Rachel in high school, and that's probably what he dreamed for all of high school, is that him and Rachel would be together, that they would just be happy, and that would be it. Rachel leans back on the couch and says,
Oh, I never thought that I would be here.
and then rolls her head to the side so that it's laying on Ross's hand. His heart is probably racing right now with pure excitement because it's Rachel. And he says, me neither. He keeps his hand there while pulling a chair up so that he can relax and probably just savor the moment. The next scene, we are at the OBGYN with Carol. She is seated on the exam table in a gown. Ross walks in. He apologizes for being late.
Work. There was this big dinosaur thing, anyway.
And a few moments later, Susan walks in. This is the first time that we're seeing Susan.
Hi.
I love Susan's wild, curly, crazy hair. I think it's just beautiful. There is like instant tension between her and Ross.
Ross, you remember Susan?
How could I forget?
Ross.
Hello, Susan. Good shake. Good shake.
They're civil towards each other, I think, because they have to be given the situation, but you can always sense a tension. Ross is just incredibly uncomfortable throughout this entire scene, of which, you know, I would be too. He begins playing with the tools on the doctor tray, grabs a speculum, and is trying to mask the discomfort with humor.
Ross, that opens my cervix.
In the next scene, we are at a dentist's office with Barry. He is cleaning the teeth of a patient. Patient's name is Robbie, which, if you are an avid Friends watcher, if you remember in the episode, the one with the evil orthodontist where we meet Barry again, Robbie is the same patient in that scene also. Let me know if you caught that. Anyway, Rachel knocks and walks in. Rachel is got her hair tied back. She's wearing a pair of overalls and a jacket. So she must have taken Ross's advice. Now she's not overly dressed up, but she still looks
Freaking adorable.
I've always thought the scene was a little bit weird because Barry is in working on a patient. I mean, I think in real life, whether it's your friend or your ex or whoever it was, you wouldn't barge into them working on a patient to have a very important conversation. You'd wait until they're done or break or whatever, right? Barry gets up and greets Rachel. He looks great. I mean, he's not really my type, but he looks great. He's like got this tan going on. He doesn't look to be brokenhearted and disheveled whatsoever.
How you doing?
I'm okay. You look great.
Yeah, well.
And then in that moment, someone over the intercom calls for Barry.
Dr. Farber, Jason Greenspan's gagging.
You right there?
Barry has to leave to go assist, of course. And side note, if you remember from episode 1, we learned that Barry's last name was Finkel. Rachel didn't want to be Dr. Barry Finkel. But now he is Dr. Barry Farber, and from here on out, he will always be referred to as Dr. Barry Farber. I wasn't able to learn why they switched, why that was necessary. I'm still kind of curious. If anyone knows, tell me. Anyway, upon seeing Barry and how great he looks, Rachel is a little bit distraught, and as soon as Barry walks out of the room, she takes her hair out of the bun and just begins fixing herself up. And she feels that it's necessary to inform Robbie that she broke up with him. In which Robbie probably doesn't give a crap. In fact, he's probably wondering why his dentist is having an important conversation in the midst of his teeth cleaning. I would be. We cut back to the OBGYN with Ross, Carol, and Susan. Ross is still awkwardly trying to pass the time. And then the three of them begin a conversation about how they're going to go about this situation, particularly when it comes to making important decisions.
Give me a for instance.
So Ross throws out the idea of deciding the baby's name, in which Carol immediately jumps in and says Marlin if it's a boy, and Minnie if it's a girl.
As in mouse?
As in my grandmother.
Still, you say Minnie, you hear mouse.
Ross is clearly not into either of these names, and so he suggests Julia. And Carol ponders it and seems to like the idea of it. But then Susan interjects and says,
Yeah, but we agreed on Minnie.
And Ross responds to her,
It's funny, we agreed we'd spend the rest of our lives together. Things change, roll with the punches. I believe Julia's on the table.
This entire scene that takes place at the OBGYN just makes me feel for Ross so much more. He wants to be part in this child's life, and he's very concerned about making big, important decisions for this child, how it's going to work between the three of them. And already in his very first suggestion, the baby's name, it sounds like Carol and Susan have already gone ahead and decided this between the two of them, even though they claimed that they're okay with Ross being as involved as he wants. We cut back to the dentist's office where Rachel is trying to apply lipstick using the dentist's overhead light, and Barry walks in. They begin making small talk, and again, I think Rachel is just floored by how great Barry seems to be doing. This is the first time that they are meeting since her leaving him on their wedding day, and he just doesn't really seem to be as affected by it as she thought that he would be. She asks him why he's so tan, and he tells her that he went to Aruba, which was where they were going for their honeymoon.
Oh no. You went on our honeymoon alone?
And he very quickly, almost shamelessly, says no.
No.
And then admits to her that he went on their honeymoon with Mindy, who was Rachel's maid of honor. Again, poor Robbie.
Yeah, well...
Rachel is pretty hurt with this news, and I think Rachel is about to confront him, but then she notices that he got hair plugs and that he also got lenses.
Well, you got plugs.
Oh, careful, I haven't quite taken it.
And you got lenses. But you hate sticking your finger in your eye.
And then he tells Rachel that, basically, that he did it for Mindy, that he's willing to do it for her.
Not for her.
Oh, just sounds like he's very much infatuated with Mindy and is willing to do anything and everything for her. Went on his honeymoon with this other woman. Sounds like he's head over heels for her. Kind of makes you wonder if something was going on before. Barry then goes on to say that he wants to thank Rachel for leaving him, essentially, because he thought that they were happy. He thought that they were getting married and were going to start this happy life together. However, since leaving him, he has now found real happiness with Mindy.
I thought we were happy. We weren't happy. But with Mindy, now I'm happy.
It feels like it's a bit of an intentional attack. Just my opinion. So then Rachel hands him back his engagement ring, and they sort of have a moment as they pass off the ring to each other. They're sort of holding hands, in which Robbie finally speaks up for himself.
Hello?
Poor Robbie just wants to get on with his day. He probably wants to go hang out with his friends. Go to the arcade. I don't know, what did kids do in the 90s? We cut back to the OBGYN where Ross, Susan, and Carol are still discussing baby names.
Oh, please, what's wrong with Helen?
Helen Geller? I don't think so.
And then we learn that Susan and Carol have decided that they aren't going to have the baby's last name be Geller, which opens a whole new can of worms.
We talked about Helen Willick Bunch.
Well, wait a minute. Why is she in the title?
Because it's my baby, too.
Really? I don't remember you making any sperm.
And we all know what a challenge that is.
You know, kind of like we've been talking about this entire episode, despite Ross wanting to be involved, they're kind of going ahead and making all these decisions without him. A lot of the important aspects of this child's life before it's even born. At this point, Ross's discomfort has amounted to be more than he can handle, and he just decides that he's just gonna go. And just as he's heading for the door to leave, Dr. Oberon walks in.
I can't
Knock,
do...
knock. How are we today? Any nausea?
A little.
Yeah, just a little.
Well, I was just wondering about the mother-to-be, but thanks for sharing.
Ross again says that he's gonna go, and I get the impression by what he says here, he says that he doesn't feel that he can be involved with this family. You know, it sounds like he's incredibly defeated right now. He wanted to be involved with this child's life, but just like we've been saying this entire time, it sounds like Carol and Susan are pretty set on raising the child as their child. But in that moment, as he reaches for the door, the baby's heartbeat can be heard. And in that moment, I think he is just forever changed.
You know what? I'm gonna go. I don't think I can be involved in this particular family.
The reality of there being a baby and him becoming a father really hits him in that moment, and he decides that he can't walk out.
I know.
And you can see in Ross's reaction and how the three of them come together in that moment, how it really just kind of changes the dynamics between the three of them, at least in that moment. We cut to the last scene of the episode. They are back in Monica's apartment. The six of them are all there. Ross has the sonogram pulled up on the TV and is showing his friends, and quite honestly, the reaction from Chandler and Joey is most relatable to me.
What are we supposed to be seeing here? I don't know, but I think it's about to attack the Enterprise.
I don't know what I'm looking at. When you become a parent, do you just like instinctively know how to read a sonogram? I just have never been able to understand what it is I'm looking at. The camera then zooms in on Rachel. She is on the phone, and we learn she is speaking to Mindy. She tells Mindy that she had met up with Barry today, and he had told her everything about their relationship. Rachel is acting like she's totally fine and cool with it.
It's okay, really. It's okay. I hope you two are very happy. I really do.
But then in the next breath...
Oh, and Min, you know, if everything works out and you guys end up getting married and having kids and everything, I just hope they have his old hairline and your old nose.
Alright guys, that is the end of episode 2. It's interesting to me that Monica was originally meant to be more of the main character, to have more of the main storyline. And even though she did play a bigger role in episode 1, the main characters that stand out to me thus far have been Ross and Rachel. Especially in this episode, it seems that we really only talked about Ross and Rachel. Ross with now discovering that he's going to be a father, and Rachel with her breakup from Barry and having to give back his ring and the whole thing. They have just kind of been the two shining stars up to this point. I'm kind of curious as to why they decided to make Ross and Rachel more of the main stars as opposed to Monica. And allegedly Monica and Joey were meant to be the main relationship of the show, but I'm just kind of curious what happened. Was it more of like a decision behind the scenes, or was it because the audience was responding more to Ross and Rachel? I'm not really quite sure. Maybe I'll have to research more into that myself. We also haven't seen a whole lot from the other 3 characters. Phoebe especially has been pretty quiet in episode 1 and 2. Chandler and Joey also, but don't worry, coming up in the next episode, the one with the thumb, Phoebe will play a little bit bigger of a role, and we will start to delve into the other 3 characters, so stay tuned. Let me know your thoughts on episode 2 down below. What did you like? What didn't you like? What were your favorite parts? I want to thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for joining me for episode 2. I hope that you hit that subscribe button so you can come back next time. Until then, I hope you have a great day.